Greetings, magical souls. I had something else planned for this one, but I've had such an overwhelming response to the animal messages that I shared the other day that I thought I would share a couple more. So I've kind of gone through some of my earlier stuff and sort of had a look and seen if there were any messages that I could share here that I felt were just apt for these 30 days. So here they are. So one of the sessions that I had was with this dog, and I remember at the time, and also just looking at my notes, that I had shared with the human guardian that when I had connected with this dog, it felt like she was kind of like giving me like the side eye, like who are you and what are you doing, and almost like a suspicious nature. And so what I had written down here is she is loving, warm, and loyal, but I feel like it can take a little bit of warming up. She likes to sort of check people out and is almost a little bit choosy about who she goes up to and who she hangs out with. And there was this real like skepticism and checking me out type thing. And then I said, is there anything that you want to share with me just before we get started? And she said, this is fascinating. I think it's cool that somebody wants to talk to me. So I wanted to share that because a lot of the time that I go in, the animals are actually really open, I guess is a good word for it. But every now and again, I have an animal that is really, really like guarded with their energy and like quite choosy. Like they almost go, well, I don't know if I don't know if I want to talk to you really. So it's interesting how they can come across, because I think there is this sort of a misconception out there that whenever we talk to animals, it's just easier and we can connect. Initially, when I was doing this session, there were two animals in the home, and this was in the earlier days. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give like sort of a week or two between the two sessions, so that I wouldn't sort of remember things from the other animal in the home, because, I don't like my brain to be sort of colored by anything. So about 2 weeks went by, and I then reached out to the other animal in the home. And it was hilarious because when I connected with the second dog in the home, there was this very, very, very excited energy coming through. And when I tuned into her, she said, I'm happy, I'm curious about you, and I'm eating. And then it was almost like she was like winking at me, and then like sitting on the floor and almost going, okay, I'm ready now, I'm like fully here. And I was, at the time, I remember, because it's all in my notes, I remember going like, what is up with this dog? Like, why is this why does it feel like this is almost staged, is kind of the word that like came to mind. And then I asked her a little bit, because I had kind of not even, I was, as I say, this is the early days. And when I was connecting with her sister a couple of weeks ago, it wasn't really something that was front of mind. And I was doing a lot of practice sessions as well during that time. She then said to me, she's like bursting at the seams to tell me things. But it's just so then it was like, yeah, she's bursting at the seams to tell me things, but she's almost like waiting, like really, really patiently, like just like really being quite almost like polite. And then all of a sudden it was like, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting since you spoke to my sister. And she was kind of expecting me to be there like the next day or whatever. And now she'd been waiting and waiting and waiting. So this was really, really, really funny. And I hadn't thought of it at the time. So I just wanted to share that because it was just one of the funniest sessions. And then one of the other things that the second dog shared with me was one of the last things that she said. She was like, we're the girls club, like we're the girls type thing. And I just kept coming through like, we're the girls, we're the girls. So I conveyed this to the human guardian, and she did confirm everything that I had said. The first dog being very, very choosy about who she goes up to, and she sometimes won't even go near people if they come visit and things like that. Like, she's very, very selective. And the second dog is more kind of like, she's a little bit more polite, but they're both playful and that kind of thing. But she did say to me about this girl thing. She said, the last thing that you said about we're the girls is something that I say all the time. I literally say to them, you guys are my girls. So this message coming through like, we're the girls, this is the girls club type thing, came through very strongly. So I thought it was a beautiful illustration of just how much our animals actually do hear and absorb when we love them and we feel excitement, and we've got these funny little phrases and things like that that we say. The animals actually really hear these things and sense these things and partake in them with us. The next one that I wanted to share is that I had a cat, and she said to me, my mum needs to be more cat. And I said to her, what do you mean by your mum needs to be more cat? And she said, people think cats are lazy and just lying around, but we are doing lots when we are just lying around. We are connecting to other places. We are connecting to ourselves. If there is overwhelm or the feeling like getting stuck or too many options or even some anxiety, I want mum to come and sit somewhere with me in the sun. Come find me and we'll get quiet together. So that was really interesting. And the human guardian shared that she does have like a million things going on at certain times. And she really just found this message quite interesting. The other fascinating thing about this cat, and it's something that I wanted to share just after sharing my hypnotherapy experience the other day, that even when she's sitting and just looking around, she is working. And what was so interesting for me is that I have in my notes here that I kept feeling like every time I would open my eyes during the session and look at the cat's picture, I almost felt like I was going down almost like a drain hole, like circling down a drain hole. And the cat's eyes, it's really hard to explain, but the cat's eyes would essentially disappear, and I would feel like I was looking into the universe. And it was the strangest thing, because it happened to me several times during the session where I had to actually close my eyes because I started feeling dizzy, like I was just being sucked into the space. Eventually, the cat shared with me is that she has the ability to look into other dimensions. And while I know that cats do this, there was the real sense that she's actually able to connect with other worlds. And there is something about her eyes, and that she's able to perceive things. And it was almost like a clairvoyance. She was almost able to see things before they were going to happen. And then she shared with me that this was part of her mission, is to connect other worlds. So she's not just got two paws in this physical world and two paws in the spiritual world, which most cats do, but it's like she is actually connecting the energies of other worlds down here on Gaia. What she also shared with me is that she was really good at almost projecting her consciousness or her energy outside of a way, and that was quite unique. So this was also about more than just being in the spiritual world. She learned to project her consciousness and travel to these places in these other worlds. And that's what she was doing while she was so-called sleeping or resting. I mean, this cat was quite particular, and it was one of the first things she says, like, cats are not just resting. Like, you think we're lazy? We're not lazy. We're working. What was interesting is that the human guardian shared with me afterwards that she has always felt like her cat was from another world. and like her cat is actually connecting to other worlds. So it was very, very interesting. The other interesting one I had was two dogs, and one of the dogs was in spirit, and one of the dogs was still in their physical body. Unbeknown to me at the time, what had been happening just shortly after the dog's passing was that the human guardian would be sitting with their dog that they still had with them, and they would suddenly randomly think about the other dog and then think that they were just wishing for the other dog to be back. But while they'd be looking and stroking their dog in front of them, they would be really, really feeling like they were stroking their dog in spirit. And so what this dog shared with me was quite amazing. So this is what I shared with the human. I said, there is a message here that if she suddenly is playing with this dog and all of a sudden thinks of her dog in spirit, and that she feels like the energy is there, she can see her, she can feel her, that the dog in spirit has almost slipped into the body of the dog that is still with her. The consciousness of the dog in spirit has come into the body a little bit. So it's almost like the dog that was still with her had an agreement that every now and again this dog could come and slip in, and it almost pushed the consciousness aside. It's not something that I really fully understand, but I think that the human terminology sometimes for this is like a walk-in. But this was the first time I'd had this with animals, but I've had one or two sessions since where it's almost like the consciousness of an animal in spirit actually comes into an animal that somebody still has in the home, so that that human can actually feel their energy and actually connect with them. Because sometimes it's that actual feeling of the energy and the human stroking them that allows them to connect. And so what was so interesting is that the human shared with me afterwards that said, particularly after the dog had crossed over, she would look at her dog that was still with her and suddenly think of the other dog, and then would just feel bad. And she was almost convinced that she could feel the other dog's presence, but then felt like she was neglecting the dog that was still here alive, and almost just like wishful thinking. So this really confirmed that this was actually happening. And so every time the human, just with a little bit more awareness, if the dog was sitting in front of her, she could almost start to sense and shift when the other dog had actually come in. And then she didn't feel guilty about it anymore. She talked to the other dog, the one that was in spirit. She'd say, "Thank you for visiting me," and all these kinds of beautiful things. So again, that's very much linking back to our multidimensional aspect that actually doesn't differ between us and our beautiful animal friends. And the last one that I want to share is a beautiful Labrador that I connected with in spirit. This soul came across very much as a wise old soul, very protective of his family, like lots and lots and lots of wisdom. He was very much about connecting, heart connector, spreading lots of love. It was such a beautiful session. But why I want to share this one is often when an animal comes through to me, I get a sense of their energy. So if they're kind of like goofy, the whole session will be like lighthearted and goofy and have this almost like this humorous aspect to everything, even when they are sharing things that are really, really deep. And then I'll get some more serious type animals and everything's quite serious. And I'll get others that are maybe a little bit shy. I'll get others that are very like forward, and they're quite open about sharing things. And sometimes, I'll just find myself like laughing because it's like they're so blunt that it's actually amusing. And what was so interesting for me about this soul is that he had this beautiful, wise, old soul, loving, connective, protective energy, but he had this sense of humor. And so the session would go and he'd share the most beautiful, deep, wise things with me. And then he'd crack a joke. And so the sense of humor kept almost coming in. And I loved the session because I kept going repeatedly throughout the session. Oh, wow, there's that sense of humor again. So I'm going to share a couple of things that this beautiful, wise old soul shared with me. So one of the things that I asked him is I said, would you like to share with me how your physical body feels different from your body now? And he said, I was a big boy then, but I am much bigger now. And he says, I was only more handsome in my physical body, but only because you could see how handsome I was. And then there was like laughter after that. And so really it was just what he was conveying to me is that his energy is very vast now. So he was big then as a Labrador, but he's much bigger now. But he missed some of the physical aspects, but he loves the fact that he's actually able to connect with everybody at the same time. So what he shared with me was that when he was in physical form, he would have to go from room to room to be with all the people in the house. And now, because he's just this vast energy, if all of them are thinking about him at the same time, he gets to be with them at the same time. And he also shared with me that he wraps the entire home in what it looked like he was almost sending out like just these waves of pink energy. And that was his way of almost like sticking his loving energy to the home. And I thought that was such a beautiful image that he shared with me. But the fact that, he was only more handsome in his physical form because he needed to be that handsome so that people could see how handsome he actually was and still is. He shared something with me about his passing, but this was on the back of it. He said, there doesn't need to be any guilt or wonder about whether you could have done things differently when I passed, or whether there was something that could have prolonged my life. It was time. And then he said, even if people think that they can prolong a life, they don't prolong the life. The soul is always in charge. And so even when it seems in these cases of where life appears to have been prolonged, that is merely the soul then deciding to continue in the body because the soul is not quite ready to go. He says the soul is always in charge, and there's never anything that we can do when it is its time. And this is a huge lesson for humans to learn, that they are not in control and that everything has its time. And the thing is that why a lot of people struggle with death is because the death is just of the physical body, but of course the energy is eternal. But the death of the physical body is something that humans struggle with because we can't control it. It's the ultimate thing. But really, being born and when a being leaves their physical vessel, those are the two things that a human being cannot control. And I thought that those were incredibly wise words. Him saying that that's why we struggle with it, because we can't control it. And I've always, since hearing him speak about that, it's interesting because, of course, there's the pain and the grieving, but we always think that we are trying to prolong our animals' lives and there's something that we can do. And I think the reason that why I wanted to share that was because when I lost my own cat, I somehow knew when he came down, one day he was fine, the next day he was not. He suddenly developed this rare illness, and I knew deep down inside me that it was his time to go. And yet I spent a whole week trying to find ways to keep him here. And it's one of the things I think we struggle with because, as most humans know, there is this thing that we find so hard to do, and that is to surrender, to surrender to natural cycles, to surrender to just sometimes what our soul has chosen for us to do, to surrender to just, okay, it is what it is. How can I work with this? How can I move through it? How can I be with it? And so the animals very much always teach about that aspect. And I think that if we can just start to relinquish the control, our life becomes a little bit easier. And it doesn't lessen the pain, and it doesn't lessen the hurt that we feel when they go, or when it's a human that goes, or when something happens. But it's just that in our need to control things, we sometimes miss out on the moments that we were meant to be just sharing, because we're so busy running around trying to find something to do or to save or to. And so it's a message for anybody out there. Maybe you've got an aging animal. Maybe you've got an animal that is unwell. Just always know that they will stay as long as they want to stay and as long as they're going to stay. And those moments that you have with them are everything, because it's the moments and it's the experience and it's the sharing of love. That is what transcends all time and space, not how many more days we could have got out of them, or this new thing or that new thing. And so I'd never really thought about it like that until this dog shared this with me in this particular way. And then the last thing I asked him was whether there was anything else that he wanted to share with me and why he was here in this family. And he said, I brought in joy, I brought in life, love, and laughter into the home. The family would come together to do things with me. And as I mentioned in the beginning, he had this very strong connective energy. He was a heart connector. I was a protector of everybody, but especially the children. And then he was sharing with me how he had had many incarnations, but they had always been in quite big homes with children. He'd never been in homes without children. And this is part of the message that I loved. It is his job to spread love and ensure that children from a young age learn the concept of unconditional love. Even though they might not fully understand when they are very young, it is something that they do not forget throughout their lives. They might do momentarily, but that seed of love is always planted. So he was ultimately here to experience, to give and receive love. And then he said to me, it doesn't need to be complicated. He says humans just need to love more, and that would solve a lot of problems. And then he said that he was the heart of the home. And he then clarified that it was not the physical home. So when he says he was the heart of the home, he was almost giving me the phrase of home is where the heart is. So he is in your heart wherever you go. And it is not tied to your physical home. But this light, this love, this anchoring is all within all of your hearts, and that will be with you always. So again, it's tied to that message of these, when they do depart, it's the moments that were shared, the love, the laughter, the joy. You see, this always makes me emotional. I mean, it's so strange, when I'm in these sessions, I'm not in my, I'm less in my human form. I'm more like it's just my consciousness that's connected. And then when I come out of the sessions and then I reread them and then I just bawl my eyes out, it's like the human part of me just always struggles with these concepts. So know that it's okay if you are struggling with some of these concepts, because I do. The amount of love and this unconditional love that animals share with us is always so beautiful. And I've shared on YouTube 2 occasions where I feel like I have woken up in what I like to call New Earth or 5D or whatever we're going to call it, but where there is such an overwhelming sense of love that it's just really hard to fathom. And well, animals just are sharing this with us all the time. So I hope that you've enjoyed those few little messages today. I hope they light up your heart. And yeah, I will make sure, because a couple of people have reached out to me via email and also in the comments and things like that about how they've really enjoyed these little snippets from my animal sessions. So going forward, what I will do is I will make a note that after each session that I do, I will take a little snippet of something and I will create a short or a little video, and I will start sharing more of these animal messages. The other thing that I just wanted to share was what I have found quite interesting is, just as we are going through the shift at the moment where we are feel like we are able to hold more unconditional love, we're remembering the unconditional love that we are expanding, we are evolving, we are raising our frequency. The animals seem to be doing exactly the same thing. I find it uncanny that all of the animals that I have been connecting with since January of this year are all these master souls, these souls that are almost like completion souls. So they kind of will be, it means that they've had many incarnations and they can almost now choose whether they want to come back and incarnate into the earth plane again, or whether they're ready to move on. And it's fascinating how they've all been these like master souls. So they're very wise. They've gained a lot of wisdom. They've been doing a lot of work. And all of these animals that I'm connecting with at the moment are like this. They're master teachers, master healers, master transmuters. It's like they've been back and forth so many times that they know they've mastered energy, basically. And it's not lost on me that as we walk through these times, that our animals are actually also evolving in consciousness. And I know a lot of people think that they're just dumb animals, but they are not. And so they are also evolving, and they are actually doing more in our homes and things like that. So my little parting message for you today is that if you don't have an animal in your life and you are really feeling called to get one, but maybe there are obstacles like wherever you're renting or living, you can't have one, or your garden's too small, or maybe you work too much and you're not sure whether you could walk a dog. You know what? You can have a goldfish. So, or a cat. So all I'm really trying to say to you is, if the calling, if you are just going, oh, I want an animal, I want an animal, I want an animal, see how you can work through the various obstacles that you might have, even if it means moving. But follow what is in here at this moment in time as we walk through these very unique and magical and beautiful energies into the new earth. If you're feeling really, really called to have an animal in your life, see what you can do to actually make that a reality. Thank you for being here again. Thank you for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed these messages today. See you tomorrow here, just us together. Thank you.